Hello, everybody, and welcome to the long and the short of it. All I can say is we are having a wild, wild week. It seems like Mercury is doing us wrong. As you can see, I'm having a little bit of a green screen issue, so I'm hoping we can resolve this as the evening goes on. But I have some unfortunate news. And the unfortunate news is that our talented and fantastic guest, Heather Bartels, tonight is ill and she could not join us. So, what this means is that my incredible co pilot, for the long and the short of it, Beth Hickey and I are going to be alone tonight. But we decided to embrace this as some sort of a creative challenge and find a way to make this right. So bear with me as I get my green screen life working. And I'm going to go ahead and bring on the fantastic, the delightful, the funny Beth Hickey. Here we go. Oh my goodness gracious. My
Hello.
Hi. I don't know what's happening. I'm over here in like ring light zombie land. I'm just okay, maybe we'll stick with this one. This seems a little bit better.
Mercury's retrograde. It's 2020.
Girl,
It's a long
girl.
week.
I mean, I don't even know what is happening. I mean, it is a situation in which, like, I mean, everything I do is just like 10 times more complicated. I think that we're kind of having the same week. So, for those of you who have been watching the series, you might remember that Beth and I are both moving at the same time. So, this saint over here in this vineyard had not only moved this week, but she is here tonight for the long and short of it. What do you think of your new place, Beth?
I'm loving it. It's very spacious, and I have my own master suite. So if I actually had like a mini fridge to store wine and a few items to eat, I would basically be self-sufficient and maybe could program food to be created in the kitchen for my children, and it'd be fine.
I have resorted to just ordering takeout. I've just hit the point where it's like I just doubled the takeout budget for this month and was like, I'm leaning into it. I'm gonna get myself some good chicken from Kismet, some good like schmaltzy chicken. I'm just gonna like survive through the month.
Mhm.
Um, but despite the schmaltzy chicken, Beth, I think I have been looking forward to this pairing for what, 6 weeks.
Mhm. Yeah.
And and the best part of it is, despite the fact that Heather was not able to be here tonight, she also shared her pairing. And I'm going to try really hard to speak as eloquently to it as she possibly would. Heather is a film historian and a genre specialist. So I'm going to work really hard to put on my film hat, but we are going to do the trifecta pairing as it would have been. But I mean, we got a heavy hitter here tonight, not only on my side on the Dalmore,
Mhm.
but also on your side with the Paul Meyer. I mean, like look at this giant bottle, bigger
Mhm.
than my head. Oh my gosh. But we are sandwiched in between. I think that what's so interesting about this liminal place where you and I are right now, whether it's with the move, whether it's with the stars, there's going to be a blue moon upcoming. Mercury is just coming out of retrograde. It is Halloween week, the greatest holiday of the year. The election is next week here in the US. If you're watching this overseas, it feels like the universe is coming to some kind of head. Is there anything for you that's happening in the next 4 to 5 days that's just like coming right to that point?
Just needing to be out of my old space completely and unpacking the new space while the kids are gone for the weekend.
Yes, yes.
So I feel the crunch.
There is like a shedding of skin, right? It's like getting a haircut when you leave an old place because you're like, oh, all the energy that I manifested in that joint, like I'm gonna like let that go and like I'm gonna like come back to new energy. And I just want to remind everybody, Beth is located in Seattle. I am located in Los Angeles. So she's having a much colder weather than I am right now. So, but you might notice, Beth, I'm a bit dressed up. I'm wearing the velvet. I'm wearing the Dalmore pin, kind of put together tonight.
You're exceedingly fancy tonight. I am slightly underdressed for this evening.
Yes. I know that a lot of people who've been watching the live cast, we talk a lot about fashion because my God, you are such a fashionista. Are you wearing anything particular tonight that we should
I
give note?
am wearing an LA designer, Doen, Doen.
Okay.
because I felt like actually the whole design of the blouse suited my pairing for the Paul Meyer proprietary red and the King Alexander III. So we'll reveal that later, as I don't own any vintage of this designer, which I see that as a personal failing of mine. I just have not come across it. And even when you do come across it, it's still, you don't find deals on it. So,
You know, it's funny how certain folks who will not yet be named become so iconic that the pieces almost have like a life of their own. But I mean, I think that was part of their success.
absolutely.
It's almost, the pieces were imbued with spirit. So I am wearing, this is extraordinarily expensive luxury H&M. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So just so you know, this is a version of a dress they've made 47 times, but it is blue velvet. And I mentioned to Beth earlier, the last time I wore it to the 100 best bars in 2018. So it hasn't made it out of the closet since. So this is its big debut on the
And
Long and Short of It.
please do mention that that event was in London, so
It
makes
was
more exotic.
It was super exotic, and the thing that I remember most about that event was, first of all, many people I love were there, including my best friend Tracy Franklin. But one of my colleagues at the time, she's Irish, and she comes up to me and she goes, "Why did I wear these dumb shoes? I hate these dumb shoes. I'm miserable." And I said, "But your shoes are so beautiful." And she goes, "And I'm so sad." And I was like, that's the difference between 40 and 20. You don't wear the dumb shoes. That being said, I'm wondering, it might be a thing to launch right into this, because here's what happened. When we found out earlier today that Heather was not well and that she had to bail out of the evening, I decided to embrace the same genre she was embracing. So I got a little wild and like made a choice. But then you decided to embrace this entirely other genre. And I think that we have kind of a lot to show the audience tonight, like a lot of interesting clips and like a lot of interesting history. So I think I might launch right into the beautiful single malt that we're tasting tonight. Sound good?
Perfect. Yes, let's.
Okay. I'm totally like crushing on that landscape behind you. So I want to hear all about it.
Oh, yeah.
So, of the many Dalmors that we have tasted over the last 6 weeks, we have done the 12, the 15, the 18, the cigar malt. Last week, the Portwood, or 2 weeks ago, the Portwood with Dan Rutstein. This is what I would consider the penultimate. I mean, this is the one where our master blender, Richard Patterson, just was like, "Yo, I'm going to drop the mic and I'm going to make the greatest whiskey in the world." And at the time this whiskey was released, it was the largest number of secondary maturation casks ever used for a single malt. So that number has actually now been beat. And hold that in your thoughts, because if you come back another day, we're going to talk about that whiskey as well in a couple weeks from now. But at the time, this beautiful single malt had 6 separate additional maturation casks. That is a feat which is so difficult to accomplish. For one, managing all those casks, because all the different kinds of casks will affect the whiskey at different rates. So you're doing a ton of consistent tasting, making sure the casks are in good order, sourcing from the people that are supplying them. It is a huge feat. Secondarily, recreating this maturation every single time you are making this whiskey. So making sure that whenever we make the King Alexander III, it is always the same single malt. So that being said, Beth, I don't know if you're imbibing along with me tonight, but oh, I see you. She's like, and there's my glass. On cue. So, of course, this beautiful single malt, it is a no age statement. I will not reveal its age, much like a lady. It does not want to give that away. But once it is matured in ex-bourbon American oak, the cask is divided into 6 separate portions of the liquid. And they are then moved to 6 separate finishing casks. And those casks are the Cabernet Sauvignon from Bordeaux that is used in the cigar malt, the port, tawny port from Graham's that is used in the Portwood, the 30-year-old Methuselah Oloroso sherry cask that is used in the 12, the 15, the 18, and the cigar malt, a Madeira cask, a Marsala cask, and last but not least, a virgin American oak cask to add a little bit of spice. So what the hell does that mean? Well, I always like to say the best kind of cocktails are cocktails in which I can taste the cocktail as a whole experience, and I can also taste every single individual ingredient at the same time. I've only had about 6 of these cocktails ever in my life where it was like that perfect balance. I can actually name them. That's how good they were. The magic of this whiskey is when you take a sip, bring it to the nose, you take a sip, you can taste the rich, bright cassis of the Cabernet Sauvignon. You can taste the nuttiness, the golden raisins that are coming from the port. You can taste the sweetness of the white wine Madeira cask. You can taste that little hint of spiciness that's coming off the American oak. But most importantly, nosing and tasting, it is a full experience. It is floral. It is round. It maintains the distillery quality of the chocolate orange that is always present in the Dalmore. And of course, Beth, this is the King Alexander III. It is a whiskey that was literally created for a king. So one of the things I need to share with everyone tonight, and the reason we might run a hair long, is because there is the story of the stag. So those of you who are watching might notice that every single time, and I'm going to bring this right up to the camera. Oh, no, that makes it worse. Okay, I'm going to take it away from the camera. But we always are associated with the 12-point forward-facing stag. The stag in original Gaelic is referred to as the Caber Fé. Okay, so it's a bit difficult to spell, but Caber Fé is the pronunciation. The Caber Fé was the official stag of the royals, the stag of the king. And what that means is no one else could bear this on a sigil or on a crest or on a shield because that was the king's emblem. But in 1263, King Alexander III, who bared the Caber Fé as his sigil, was out in a hunting party. And he was a very brave man. He had all the lairds from all the clans surrounding him and all of his loyal subjects. And they were out hunting the giant Scottish red stag. Now you're going to see a theme tonight here between aggressive animals and royalty, so just keep that in mind. That being said, they spot one of these giant red stags. This is the largest land mammal in the British Isles. Huge, 17 feet tall with a full rack. And the king decides to go after it. So the king does successfully wound the giant stag, but he does not kill it. And the stag circles around the glen and charges at the king, knocking him off his horse. And then the stag circles around the glen again and charges at the king. And it's pretty much inevitable death. This thing is huge compared to King Alexander III. But just before the stag reaches him, Colin Mackenzie of Kentale leaps in front of his sovereign and spears the stag in the heart and takes the full weight of the stag from it rushing to the king and saves the king's life. So why does that matter to the Dalmore? Well, in 1867, our whiskey was purchased by the Mackenzie clan, and with it came this capability, this ability, this proud emblem of King Alexander III that was awarded to Colin Kentale in 1263. So Colin Mackenzie of Kentale was given the right in perpetuity as the savior of the king to bear the 12-pointed forward-facing royal stag. And thus, Richard Patterson created our most opulent, decadent, innovative whiskey in honor of the story of King Alexander III and his savior, Colin Mackenzie of Kentale, as a tip of the hat to our royal heritage and a tip of the hat to the Mackenzies who started the golden age of the Dalmore. So, Beth, that is a big story. And when I said this to you, when we decided, I've said this several times, we went out on a limb and we're going to do a wine and whiskey pairing. I know this was the one that you were like, huh, it's a big whiskey and I got to find a big wine. So tell us what you decided to pair this with.
Well, the King Alexander III is the gem in the Dalmore portfolio that is in the Elevage portfolio that I represent. And I knew I needed to pick its wine equivalent in my world. And so I had essentially one choice, and that was the Paul Meyer. This is the proprietary red blend 2016. Storied property. It just came into the Gallo world last year when their family decided to sell, and they just came into absolute agreement with the Gallo family. It was very much of like minds and shared vision. So this property, the first vintage was released in 1986. And so we're actually celebrating with the 2016 release, the 30th anniversary.
Oh, cheers.
This wine. Absolutely. So it is based on the Bordeaux blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. It always has all 5 grapes. This particular vintage, it is 80% Cabernet. We're looking at 9% Merlot, 5% Cab Franc, 4 Petit Verdot, and the rest is Malbec. So 85% new French oak and is aged for 20 months. Essentially high elevation fruit for the most part. So you get the concentrated berries, just concentration of flavor, color, and intensity. And this wine to me is, it's finessed, just like the King Alexander III, but it's elegant. It's nuanced. It's a wine to, it's a contemplative beverage. Go back to last week or 2 weeks ago.
Contemplative beverage. That is brilliant. That is brilliant, my love.
It's beautiful. And so the Jason Paul Meyer, who founded the winery in the early 80s, was a successful lawyer and just he loved wine and came out here or there eventually and started the winery. And his daughter Cleo still oversees and manages it on behalf of within the the Gallo family. And she's wonderful. It is very much a family story. But this wine to me has the elegance, the nuance, a little bit of quirky innovation that I'll get to in a bit when I talk about my pairing, because I don't want to give away too much. But I just felt that it really, it would be the wine equivalent of the King Alex.
And I just want to reiterate, I talked several times about the 6 casks, and you said 5 grape varietals that are going into this wine. And I think that there's a real synergy there between what it means to manage all of these different flavors that are interacting with each other and having a conversation. And I think one of the hardest things about creating the King Alexander III is Richard never wants any of those casks to override the other. He always wants them to be, as I've often said about the Dalmore, in conversation. They're always and in this context, it's more like a chorus, like 6 beautiful, fantastic vocal parts singing together. I know in wine, blending grapes is just as much of a practice and an expertise.
It very much so. You think of it, the grapes as spices, and it's very vintage dependent. At least in Bordeaux, it would be. So the Cabernet offers the structure and the cassis. The Merlot offers the plushness, the purple fruit. The Cab Franc would offer the violet nose and kind of a bit of a raciness to it. The Petit Verdot is the dark inky color and definitely the violets as well. And the Malbec adds a nice rich mid palate. So there's a beauty to it because different vintages, it will highlight the different strengths of the different grapes and you would blend accordingly. In Bordeaux, you have right bank, left bank, and depending on what bank you are, Merlot leads or Cabernet leads. In Napa, you can take that idea of the blending, and you don't necessarily have like the traditional like Saint Emilion where it's Merlot led, or the other side of the river where it's going to be Cabernet led. It's just you can do whatever you want, but you're still playing with the 5 grapes, and it's an homage, if you will.
Well, I will say I had a little bit of a chuckle with this because, there's some some whiskey bottles that, you know, you walk into a store and you're like, oh, I'll have the, and then like the whole staff goes like, oh, excuse me, sir, she wants the blah blah blah. So what happened was when I actually went to purchase these bottles because we couldn't get them. You know, Beth and I are in the trade, so oftentimes we'll speak to our distributor and reach out and get bottles directly. But this was one that we actually had to go out into the wild and find. And I walked into the store and I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'm going to need the Paul Meyer Proprietary Red." And it was like a record scratch. It's like the whole place looked at me and I was like, "And I'll take 3." And they were like, they're like, oh, okay, well, this lady means business. But you know, that's kind of the joke around the King Alexander is that, you know, this is one of those whiskeys that when you call that name out and you're like, I will have a King Alexander III, it's like the record scratches.
Mhm.
And I think that the Paul Meyer Proprietary, especially this vintage, has that effect on people. It has that effect of like, oh, this is a serious wine. This is not a wine we laugh about. It's not a wine we play with. This is a serious wine. This is an elegant wine. It is wine that is almost divinely inspired, for lack of better phrase. And I have to tell you, damn, Beth, you've knocked it out of the ballpark again. I mean, the nose. This is my new signature. I've been doing this for 16 years, and there are a couple things that people will be like, oh, that's the Jenny Wren thing. It's the double nose. It's like the double nose.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's insane. And then you can like switch them, right? And the irony is, and you'll hear me talk about this a lot about the olfactory bulb and your different nasal cavities, but it is very different if you move them. You know, there is something happening on both sides.
And also a fun fact, depending on where your eyes look, your nose, your sensory capabilities will pick up different aspects of the beverage.
You know what? I think I've heard about this. So a long time ago, I was involved, it's a long story, in a whiskey event that was dealing with light, sound, there was one more, tactile touch. But there was a thing that if you played high sounds, you taste sweetness. If you play low sounds, you taste bitterness or umami. But yes, there was something like red light, you taste sweetness. Blue or green light, you taste grassiness. And I think it's the same principle. So now you got me all okay. Let's see if we can do this. I'm gonna do a look to my left, look to my right. You want to do it together?
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's see if we
Well,
can
I
do it.
know where my power spot is for tasting.
Power spot. Okay, I am not a somm. I'm merely a whiskey person. But let's see. Okay, my power spot. Well, that tasted more earthy and minerality. That tasted drier. This is crazy, Beth.
It's fascinating. There's
Oh,
a mentor I was working with, and he gave me an exercise to figure out where my spot was to focus when I do blind tastings for
fascinating.
exams.
Yes. I think that's just fascinating. I'm going to digress for a second because we don't have our third guest tonight. I worked with an exercise coach one time, and because I was in an accident in 2007 where I had trauma on my left side. I guess to the camera right now it's my right, but it's my left side. And he worked with me to actually neurologically retrain to always look to my left when I was working out, because I was training my brain to not consider this a damaged place, but a strong place. But yes, neurologically, the eye line can actually retrain the brain, which is absolutely fascinating.
It is really fascinating when you, because beverages are very sensory.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you, just for my purpose to train for blind tasting and passing exams, I'm in assessing wine, to be fair. It's not just to pass the exams, but where is my vision and sensory, like, where is it dialed in? Because if I look up here, I'm just like, asking my children to clean up the bedroom. They're like, what? It's not registering. But if I look to my bottom left, I'm very focused. And in fact, when I passed my advanced exam, I was looking to the left very intently. And that was before I knew, but now I know that that is.
This is so fascinating to me. I feel like we could do a whole long and short of it about neurological training and like brain synapses. That might be episode like 14 at some point. But I'm actually going to get us down to the dirty business of sharing our pairing. And it's only because it's interesting. You were just talking about tactile. And one of the hardest things about the pandemic is that so much of what we are doing is visual. We are in this situation where we are tactile monkeys. Like we want to interact with each other, but we are stuck in this visual medium. And tonight, your pairing is something that is exceptionally tactile, exceptionally emotional, exceptionally visceral. And when it was presented for the first time, it was presented live in front of an audience. And it is a living object that to this day could be handled, touched, has texture and meaning. But we only get to present it tonight as a visual performance, which it is what it is. But I'm going to ask you, my dear, would you like me to let you say what it is first, or would you like me to roll that beautiful bean footage?
Let me start.
Okay.
Then maybe give me a head start and then you can go into it, because the piece that I have in mind particularly is a few seconds in, but I think leading into it is wise. So my pairing actually from day one, I'm a visual taster, I'm just very visual, was Alexander McQueen. My background and just showing like the reality of like my moving behind me. So I'm like, no, fantasy. Try to do this. So Alexander McQueen. The reason why I chose this particular designer, other than his sheer brilliance, is that he did have Scottish heritage.
Yes.
Very famous British designer. Went to Central St. Martin's. I mean, just so iconic, so important. He gave us the low-rise jeans in the 90s, or the aughts. We can blame him.
It's okay. When he gave us low-rise jeans, I still had a body for low-rise jeans, so I was cool with it. I was like,
yeah, true. There's that. But he gave us so many things. But for me, it was his Savile Row training. Which, I mean, just top notch. I mean, if you want a suit, you want a British suit made in Savile Row, because it's going to be exquisitely made and you'd pass it down generation after generation. And he had incredible skill. And he had such a foundation that he was allowed to be incredibly creative and was a bit of a bad boy of fashion and broke rules. So, Dalmore was breaking, rules for the King Alex. Hallmeyer, when they brought in the Bordeaux grapes, is suitcase clones from France. And when they got caught, because they came in through Canada, they had some time and went to a local nursery and bought some other grapes or vines, and just turned those in instead and kept the contraband.
What a dirty little secret from Hallmeyer. My goodness.
Which, I mean, that makes like there's a little bit of that, that renegade spirit. So to me, it just had to be Alexander McQueen. And there's one particular piece that I had in mind. It's not the model I was thinking of. She shows up a few seasons later, but if you want to roll the clip.
Okay, bear with me, YouTube land, because God, technology is wild this week. So we're gonna hope everything works out according to plan. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna leave us on screen, Beth, so we can hypothetically comment if we want to. But here we go. Here is the magnificent Alexander McQueen piece that Beth decided to pair tonight.
So this, and I'll talk as it.
Okay, I'm gonna pause that because she's gone off screen. But here is the irony about the long and short of it is that even tonight, when Heather could not make it, sometimes these themes leak in. And I think it's partially because you and I, Beth, have a mind meld, but there are themes in what you chose that I will call back to shortly. But talk a little bit about, my God, that stunning stag headpiece.
So I see her referred to as the stag bride. And as soon as we were talking about this in March and I was going through my head about the pairings, I thought of her. Just because there's something, of course, the stag, that's easy.
Of course.
Alexander McQueen having Scottish heritage. But it was really the fact that, this article of clothing based on his training is going to be exquisitely made. It's incredibly creative. There's something very ephemeral about it, the way that fabric drapes over the actual, like the headpiece. And I think that both expressions here have something very ephemeral about them. There's an elegance that you can't quite touch. It's very gossamer, but there's also a richness. And you know that there is a structure because there is excellence in the foundation of this. And I feel that piece, that dress was so incredibly well made. And to me, if I could, I'd be wearing that, drinking both of these right now.
Which sounds amazing.
That's how I wish I rolled.
I'm trying to pull up a photo right now, specifically of that piece, and I think it's really important to sort of highlight.
If I might just suggest doing a Google search of McQueen Stag Bride Fall 2006.
Oh my goodness. Well, I did try. Let's see if it'll allow me. It keeps taking me to Pinterest where it takes me to down this rabbit hole of small images. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to really quickly share at least this image if I can. Bear with me, folks out in YouTube land. Let's see. There we go. So it's not perfect, but you can see the image to right here. So I just want to bring up some points about it. It's decadent. It is mixing genres. It is mixing bride with death. It is mixing stag with virgin. It is mixing height with width at the bottom. There are so many things happening inside this design that are, calling back to the King Alexander III, as well as, of course, the Paul Meyer proprietary red. Beth, as usual, you've outdone yourself. I mean, this pairing is fantastic. I mean, it's truly, truly fantastic. I only wish I had had the pleasure of seeing this show in person or seeing this piece in person.
I believe it's currently at the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Oh, good call out to the
Victoria. When we can go back to London.
And we will go back to London. I'm absolutely sure of it. But God, excellent pairing. I am curious. So I'm counting. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. I think prongs on the antlers. Hard to tell. But I would like everybody out in YouTube land to hold some themes in their head: wild animals, virgins, monarchs, and decadence. So this seems to be the theme tonight for the King Alexander III and the Paul Meyer proprietary red. So I'm going to stop this share for just a second and take us back to the main theme. And I always say, guys, bear with me. I'm running the board as well as hosting always. So that kind of brings me into my pairing tonight, Beth. I decided when I found out Heather couldn't make it that I was going to try to flex my film muscles a little bit, which is not always easy. And I really didn't know exactly quite what to pair. But there was one film that really stuck out to me, and I decided to make the choice of this particular film. So that being said, the film I decided to pair is Elizabeth. Couldn't help myself. Elizabeth is a 1998 British biographical drama film. whatever that means. Written by Michael Hurst, directed by Shekhar Kapoor, and starring Cate Blanchett, of course, in the Golden Globe winning title role of Queen Elizabeth I. It basically follows Queen Elizabeth from 1558 when she unexpectedly acquires the crown. She was basically an orphan that had been sent off to a farm because her father, Henry VIII, did not want her or care about her. And suddenly she becomes the Queen of England, and she is shepherded to London, again, the London theme, and is sort of thrown into this world of intrigue and opportunistic politics that she was not at all prepared for. And there was something about Elizabeth in general that I identify with in the sense of Alexander, excuse me, I said Alexander III, King Alexander III, in that this was this woman that had been influenced by her mother, Catherine, had been influenced, excuse me, her mother, Anne Boleyn, not Catherine, had been influenced by the French court, so she spoke French, had been shepherded off to the pasture where she was very engaged in pastoral England at the time, and then all of a sudden was thrust into the court. So this is a woman who had many influences. But from a personal perspective, when you talk about film and pairing with a tasting, this film won numerous awards for its decadence, its color, its contemplative nature of the inner workings of romance at the court. It was an entirely new way to look at royal drama. And it really focuses on the sort of will she or won't she conversation around will she or won't she take a husband. So this was my choice tonight. And part of it was because Elizabeth's journey is not just the journey of becoming an independent monarch. It's a journey of becoming the Prince of Britain, because male or female, the monarch is always referred to as the Prince of Britain. So it is a non-gendered title. So if we're drinking a whiskey fit for a king, and we're drinking one of the most beautiful, complicated, and apparently sneaky blends, I figured that we could embrace a woman who did everything she could to become an independent. So I'm going to show to you the penultimate scene in Elizabeth, where she has decided to marry no man, but has decided to marry England and become an independent monarch. And the first time she appears before the court as the absolutely iconic monarch that we all know and think of when we think of the beautiful Elizabeth I, Queen of England. So it's decadent, it's rich, it's joyful. The color is amazing. She gives a very meaningful look to Ray Fiennes' younger brother, Joseph Fiennes at the time, who was very hot in the 90s. And it has all the decadence of the wine and the whiskey that we are enjoying right now. So give me one moment. I'm going to key up this clip. And this is my pairing for the evening. Elizabeth starring the luminous Cate Blanchett.
Observe, Lord Burleigh. I am married to England.
I mean, come on. Would you mess with that woman? Because I wouldn't. I mean, she is royalty to the nth degree. And what I thought was really fascinating about sharing that clip with you tonight was, can't you imagine whether it was the actual Elizabeth I or Kate Blanchett herself wearing the Alexander McQueen?
Oh, Elizabeth would have.
I mean, don't they call back to each other the virgin? It's like the bride, but the virgin bride, but the white, but the almost vampiric, like lack of color in the face, and like the drama and the gothic. My goodness.
So I have mentioned to you before my obsession with Elizabeth, and I've read maybe 7 books about her life. So that's her becoming Gloriana.
Mm-hmm.
And her great love, Lester, is, Ralph Fiennes' younger brother there. So beautifully cast, I must say.
He's so smoldering. He's just smoldering all over the place.
Good. It's solid, solid casting. And then, of course, she's one of my favorite Elizabeths of all time. I think that's a fantastic pairing because she loved clothes. She left a lot of clothes, and she loved the drama, and she loved the power and the secret language of clothing, what it communicated. And she was so tired of being pestered to marry, and just wanted to basically have that, just to be left alone. She just wanted to rule.
Yes. And I think what's so interesting about this particular scene in the movie, and look, all Hollywood, some of this is dramatized and hyperbolized.
Yeah, mixed up the story for.
Yeah, of course. But there is a truth to the fact that Elizabeth realized that as long as the husband was in question, she would never be fully in power. And as long as the children were in question, she would never be fully in power. And it was a way of her asserting her authority as the prince that she would never be questioned again. And I do think there is, in that the runway show you just showed us, I do think there are aspects of both Elizabeth and Mary Queen of Scots, two enormously powerful women that were, vying for sovereignty at the same time.
And sadly, the same seat.
And sadly, the same
awkward.
Seat. Yes.
Yeah.
And it almost speaks to the fact that Alexander McQueen, and this is true of many people, in the British Isles, they do have a divided citizenship. I am Scottish, but I am also British. I am English, but I am also British. So what does that mean when it actually becomes tactile fashion or something that you can hold in your hand? And I don't know, for some reason, there was just a symbiosis today between your choice and my choice. And I thought that was kind of funny, a little funny.
No, I think that's fantastic because Elizabeth absolutely would have worn that. She would have loved the drama of the headpiece.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the model was wearing maybe some white makeup, although Elizabethan time it was lead.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
But the drama of it, she would have.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's like a through line tonight through both the whiskey and the wine that we're drinking is drama. No one picks up a King Alexander and thinks, I'm going to toss this back because, just want to enjoy some whiskey with my Netflix tonight. If you are pouring a King Alexander, it is a moment. It is a pause. It is a meditation. And I feel so strongly the Paul Meyer's the same. It is a moment. It is a meditation. So that being said, before we play the last selection that was chosen by Heather, tell me tonight about where you can get the Paul Meyer. I mean, I know we can always go back to Elevage on Instagram, but what's the best place to explore this wine?
You can go to the Paul Meyer website, just their name, and it will pop up if you use the Google search. And you will be directed there. You can also go to, I would look at Drizzly Total Wine, and of course, utilize your local wine store.
Of course.
If you don't have it, they will most likely order it for you and will be thrilled to make sure that you're happy.
I love that. I've had so much success recently too on wine.com. Not to give them a specific shout out over any other
Yeah.
vendor, but I had to, because of the show, I had to ship some rare wines over to some folks in New York City. And it was very helpful. And I found some really cool stuff on there. So wine.com as well, I think. And then, of course, you can always go to the Dalmore, because we're very fancy, thedalmore.com, and learn about any of the whiskeys that we create. You can find our whiskeys on Drizzly, of course, reservebar.com, and of course at your local store, because if you are on any of the coasts, the Dalmore is widely available, especially the 12, 15, and 18. Now, King Alexander might be slightly harder to find, but I would say if you make a nice request, someone might bring it in for you. Okay. So we have done a royal note. We have done a virgin note. We have done a complicated, decadent fashionista note. Now I'm going to celebrate the note that Heather brought, even though she was not able to be here tonight. And the note that Heather brought was something that was very much of her specialty and something that was very much of her genre. So unfortunately, I did not get as much time to speak to Heather as I wished, but it turns out after doing a lot of research on her, she was a genre-specific film historian. And it appears that a lot of the work that Heather has done is around the horror genre. So tonight, I'm going to bring you to the best of my ability what Heather's selection would have been. And Heather's selection tonight would have been The Witch, a New England folktale. Now, if Elizabeth was evoking the 90s, which was Shakespeare in love, right? So all these decadent period dramas with tons of great costumes. The Witch that came out in 2015 was very evocative of a certain genre of horror that came out that included what I would refer to as mumblecore horror or slow burn horror. This would include a ghost story. And it would also include, what was the other one that I was thinking of so hardcore today about The Pretty Thing That Lives in My House. So these were all made within the same 2-year period. And I kind of think of them as quiet horror, where there's a lot of things that are uncanny or disconcerting, but not necessarily jump scare or gore or something that's in the traditional horror genre. So this particular movie, The Witch, is a 2015 period supernatural horror film written and directed by Robert Eggers in his feature directorial debut. The film follows a Puritan family who encounters forces of evil in the woods beyond their New England farm, and stars Anya Taylor-Joy as Thomasin. Now, you might remember Anya Taylor-Joy has been in a number of things, but she was in that M. Night Shyamalan movie that was, help me out here, Beth, where the guy had all the personalities. Do you remember?
Yes.
Split.
Yeah.
Split. She was the heroine of Split. So she's done a lot of really cool stuff. This movie is a true slow burn. It is you gotta want to sit down and really be prepared to watch a slow burn. But what happens as the movie progresses forward, the stress of conquering this cold and merciless landscape of New England is combined with this ever increasing high strangeness of seemingly more and more supernatural events that keep happening and closing in on Thomasin. A large part of the film, you don't actually understand if it's real, if it's not real, what's happening, but the combined oppression of the word and deed of women being so tightly controlled at the time leads the film into what I would say is an inevitable but surprising conclusion. Now, guys, I have to apologize. If you have not seen The Witch, I'm going to encourage you to say, thank you, this was an awesome episode 6, and I'm going to peace out tonight, because if I play this for you, it's going to spoil the penultimate, the climactic scene of The Witch, and it's going to give away the big reveal of the film. So this is your warning. If you want to bail out now, now's your time. But this is the moment that allows the audience to piece together every single moment that's come before and shows that evil is real and present among us. So it being almost Halloween, I think this is a perfect way to end the night. And I'm not going to quite comment on why I thought Heather chose this until after I play the clip, but listen closely. It is very quiet, so you have to pay attention. And at this point, to give you some context, Thomason's entire family has been slaughtered, a couple of them by her own hand, which is disconcerting. And she is entirely, except for a dangerous and volatile he-goat called Black Phillip, alone in the New England wilderness. So this is the moment in which she embraces the fact that she is utterly alone and has nowhere else to turn. And I'm going to pull up this clip right now. Bear with me. And here is the witch.
Black Phillip, I conjure thee to speak to me. Speak as thou dost speak to Jonas and Mercy. Dost thou understand my English tongue? Answer me.
What dost thou want?
What canst thou give?
Wouldst thou like the taste of butter? A pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Yes.
Wouldst thou like to see the world?
What will you from me?
Dost thou see a book before thee? Remove thy shift.
I cannot write my name.
I will guide thy hand.
So, for those of you that did not quite catch the dialogue, because it is
Very quiet. Black Phillip is actually the devil, and he has been the devil the whole time, and he has been driving the forward action, despite the fact that Thomason did not know or necessarily believe that he was actually Satan incarnate. And he asked her the question, would she like to live deliciously? And she decides to write her name in his book. So that is the pairing that Heather chose. And I'm going to cop it up to the fact that enjoying this Paul Meyer Proprietary Red 2016 and enjoying this King Alexander III from the Dalmore is truly living deliciously. And what a way to end right before the Halloween weekend.
indeed.
Yes, ma'am. So it was really fun to imbue some horror into our tasting tonight. We don't get to do that very often. And again, the whole point of this, the long and the short of it, Beth being the long sip and I'm the short shot, was to try to take the wine and the whiskey genre into something that was honestly never been done before. What would it look like if you paired the wildest fantasy you had? So, Heather, thank you for sharing that with us tonight. We're really sorry you're not here. We hope you get better. But it's about time for us to wrap up, Miss Beth Hickey.
I know, we did it.
We did it. Just the two of us. It's okay. We had fun. Thank you so much, as usual, for this incredible wine pairing. I've had the most fun, and I can't thank you enough. We have 3 episodes left. Yes, 3 episodes. Are you excited?
I'm excited. We're going to go to a small island.
We are. We're going to this. So tonight is our final Dalmore selection. And we are going to be visiting a very small island off the west coast of Scotland in the Inner Hebrides. Not going to reveal it yet. You guys might have some ideas based on what I do. But yet again, Beth has created 3 entirely incredible pairings. And in addition, next week, we have a very shocking and surprising guest, an old friend of mine from New York, who is going to pair something completely out of the box. So that being said, Beth, thank you so much for everything you do. And always a pleasure. I mean, you and I can talk for an hour. I think we're okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Always a pleasure. I loved your movie choice, your pairing.
Thank you. I loved your fashion choice. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was great. Yay.
Yay. Well, awesome. So I'm going to close down for the night, which means I take Beth off camera because we got to do it this way because Zoom and stuff. And then bring us back on for kind of the final credits. And you guys are going to see tonight that, of course, Heather is credited tonight. We didn't quite have time to take her off, but I just want to say we're so sorry not to enjoy her because she is beautiful, brilliant. She's done work with Beth before, and maybe in the future doing a project with the Dalmore or with the Elevage collection, we can find another way to work with the talented Heather Bartels. So I am going to take myself off tonight, and I hope you guys have the most fun. And over the well, I guess there's no holiday, but the Halloween weekend, please make sure you take care of yourself. Please make sure you take care of each other. And the last thing that I always say anytime we do these tastings is I am 21 years old. That sounds right. Beth is also 21 years old. We just, we look younger, but we are at home. We are enjoying a whiskey and wine pairing in the safest way possible. Neither one of us are driving. So if you decide to imbibe in any of the things that we've shown you over the last 6 weeks, please do so responsibly because we here at The Long and Short of It always imbibe responsibly. And on that note, I am going to share my screen and I am going to peace out for the night. So good night, guys.